What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be working on the garage storage and we're going to do it in two separate ways. We're going to do it open concept, I guess, where you don't add any doors, you just kind of build the storage and you use it. And then we're going to go one step further, we're going to add some doors, we're going to frame it out, and I'll show you guys how to do that. So let's get started. Okay, so before we get too far, let's kind of go over a materials list. So that way, if you're going to do this, you already know what you need. So, impact driver, drill, whatever you have. I have a box of deck screws. These are 3-inch. Those are for driving the studs into, or the slats into the studs in the wall. A big box of 2.5-inch. This is going to be what structurally holds everything together. Our pocket hole screws, makeshift, and what holds the outside frame to it. So, tape measure, obviously, earbud for music, a level, and then a good amount of 2x4s, obviously already cut down the size. So, I'm building this in 2 sections. So essentially, if you have a larger garage than me, or you're going to be doing this on another wall, you can take a 2-section, add another one next to it, maybe add another one, depending on your personal space that you have available to you. These are my spacer blocks and my supports that go horizontally this way. And then I have 5 pieces that will go on the wall, and that will be my supports that hold the shelves, essentially. So we'll get those adjusted first, or we'll get those attached first, and we'll do it in one corner. We'll use our level, so that way everything's perfectly straight. We'll do the other ones, and then we'll drive screws in. I'm gonna pre-drill for the holes on the outside corners, and I don't think I need to for the other holes. I just don't want my boards to split at the ends. So let's get them up. So now that I have my 2 ends, and I know that it's perfectly level, which lucky for me, the concrete was perfectly level, so I just got to use that as a reference. I didn't know that, but I had this just in case. I'll start putting my other screws in, and this will just keep it tight to the wall. These are just spacer blocks, so that way I don't have to juggle everything. That's it.
So when I was setting these shelves up against the walls, I was using a level against the ends so that way everything was perfectly in line with one another.
Okay, so I had to adjust my spacing a little bit because it ended up being a little bit too tall. Same concept, just fix your spacing. The adjustments are made down below. This puts me right over this faceplate for this plug. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna notch out, just mark on either side, and I'll go in, I don't know, about 1/4 of an inch. I think this plate's only about 1/8 of an inch thick, but I'll notch out all of this so it just fits over it. I'm not gonna use these plugs for anything anyways. I'm gonna redo the electrical in the garage, so that way I have plugs up here that I can then connect reels to and pull them out if I need to have an extension cord that's over my workbench. So we'll notch this out. Either way, we'll notch this out and it'll fit perfectly. So let's do it.
Alright, so at this point of the build, I already have my backs of my shelves mounted to the walls exactly where I want them. And I'm happy with the spacing. So I'm just going to mount the front of the shelves to the backs of the shelves temporarily, so that way I can get the legs mounted to the fronts of the shelves. This way, I can detach the entire front, shelves included, and my spacing is locked into place. Then I can attach my support slats that act as the spacer between the front and the back. And when I go to slide the front back into place, everything's all attached already as one big unit, and I don't have to mess around with the level as far as getting the shelves perfectly in line. That was a lot of front and back and front, but I hope that made sense. And hopefully if you're watching while you're listening, then, well, you got to see what was actually happening. Now, if you saw my workbench build, then you've seen already how I do these janky pocket hole screws. I don't know really where my Craig jig went. It's around here somewhere, but I haven't had time to look for it. So it's back to these guys, and well, they work just fine. They're not exactly the prettiest to look at, but pocket holes in general aren't all that pretty. So we'll make do with what we have, and they held up just fine. Now, if you are going to follow the build plans, then I have the spacing already worked out and everything's in there for you. But if you're going to go rogue, then I'm going to just tell you that the only ones that actually matter are the outside ones. Make sure your outside corners line up perfectly and everything on the inside. Get it roughly evenly spaced. You can probably just eyeball it and it'll be strong enough to hold it. That's what I did, but I worked it out for those of you who want the build plans and want everything to be absolutely perfect. I did do the spacing for you. All right, so we've got the one side done, and as you can see, it's a couple days later, but this is already being put to good use and it is sturdy as hell. So we're gonna do the other side today, and I should have done this way. We're gonna do the other side today, and we're gonna do it slightly different. So I did the pocket hole thing on this side, and it worked out well enough, but I've seen other people do it where they assemble each actual shelf and then they throw it up later. So we'll try that with this side, and then I can kind of speak to which one is easier to do, so that way if you're going to do this project, you can choose the easier option. So let's get started. Okay, now I've got all of my pieces built, and I'm gonna bolt them to the wall, and then I'll bolt one of the sides this way into the side of the existing shelf that's there, so that way I have just my exact same spacing. After that,
we'll see what happens because I kind of got to figure this out as I go. So let's get going. Now, since I'm speaking to you from the future and I've already been through the whole process, I can now talk to you about which way is the best. And if you can't screw into the side of the shelves like I'm doing here in the video, then the best way to do it is to start with the pocket holes and then move on. Exactly how I did it in the video. It's not that I am rooting for me or anything. It's just I accidentally stumbled on, I guess, the most efficient way that I find to do it. However, if you were working with two people and you had somebody to use as an extra pair of arms, then starting this way would save you a ton of time just drilling out all those pocket holes. Alternatively, if you were butting one of the sides up against a wall and you could screw directly into a stud on the sides, then that would also save you some time. But I have plans for both sides of my shelves and I couldn't go all the way up against the wall. So for the shelves, for the top of them, I just used a sheet that was a 1/2 inch thick. You don't need anything that's much thicker than that, considering all of the weight is distributed through the actual frame of the shelves. This is just being used really to fill the space, so that way everything is not falling through and give me a flat surface to set things on. I would use a sheet of OBS. I think a 1/2 inch sheet you can probably get for about $17, but everybody seems to be starting projects where I'm from because there was only one sheet left. So I went with particle board. It was a little bit more pricey, but it gets the job done. You can skip this part if you'd like to, but I actually did use some screws to hold the shelves down to the studs, just so that way my shelves weren't sliding left and right. All right, so we've got this finished and it is quite large. I have a ton of room here. This is a 20-foot wall and this takes up about 16 feet of it, giving me a little bit of space on that side to work with and a little bit of space on that side to add something that I don't know yet. Now this is what I see in most houses when I'm driving by. Just open storage like this, whether it's metal wire racks that are gonna be easily 6 times the cost of this, or it's something similar to this style. Plans for this, as you see it here, is going to be down in the description below. I'm going to take one step further and I'm going to frame this out and add some doors so that way everything's concealed. Now, if you are going to conceal this, I obviously had thought about this ahead of time, but make sure your legs are sticking out about 3/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch or whatever the thickness of the board that you're going to use on the side is. That way you don't have to add a face frame, it's already there. Okay, so when I'm framing this guy out, I have this gap is wider over here than it is over here, and that's because this sits perfectly flat but the garage tapers down, so that way if the garage floods, everything runs out instead of towards the house. So I'll put this board here, and it's obviously a bit long. I'm just gonna run my pencil along the top of the shelf on either side, and that gives me 2 lines that I'll connect, and that gives me my angle. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this part of the build. I'm not going to bore you guys with painting because I'm going to use the same old method I've been using. I haven't had a chance to bust out the sprayer and start testing it out. So we're just going to use the old roller and paintbrush. These dogs are growing crazy, so I'm sorry. From here, you guys can patch up any nail holes or screw holes and then paint it whatever color tickles your fancy. I'm gonna go with the same exact color I've been going with everything else in the shop, just that black that I bought a gallon of and still have more than I know what to do with. There will be plans for this build down below. This is gonna be the first opportunity to officially support the channel other than with your OHOs. But other than that, that's gonna do it for this week. Thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. It was absolutely amazing that we just kicked off the last video. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe in the shop, and I'll see you guys next time.